Constantinople, the heart of the Byzantine Empire. For hundreds of years, the Byzantine Empire was the center of intellectual and political life, as well as the home of the Greek Orthodox Church. One of the main contributions to the success of the Byzantine Empire was one of their emperors, Justinian I. He believed the Byzantine Empire to be the new Rome. This belief fueled his desire to see his empire leave its mark on the world and create a lasting legacy for the ages. Emperor Justinian rose to power in 527 when he succeeded his uncle as emperor. Justinian had a great vision of what he wanted Constantinople to be, but this vision was very costly. Justinian raised taxes in order to fund the breathtaking architecture, and he imposed reforms to maintain social order based on hierarchy. These taxes and reforms outraged many people, leading to the Nika riots.
Itarchies itan architavies que avisan anamagalomeros tis polise eripia se manoania meres o autocatoras itan etimos na et catalipsi to throno tu ospu I genecatu ton epise na agonisti yatin autocatoria tu sti sinecia apostile stratiotas na catastili tis tarachies. Itarchies teliosan afu istatiotes tu skatosan pano apo trianta hiliades liadilotes.
After the Nika revolt, Justinian had firm control of the empire, so he contemplated reform of Roman law and he started to rebuild Constantinople. Justinian built aqueducts, many public buildings, and most importantly, the Hagia Sophia. The Hagia Sophia became the imperial church as well as a model of late imperial art, and it showed the close relationship between politics and religion in the empire. The bond of politics and religion caused Christianization, which in turn threatened classical literature. However, Christian education and literature depended on Latin and Greek, so Greek culture remained a major influence. Latin also continued through government documents that were written in Latin with Greek translations.
Latin scholarship was boosted when Justinian's war in Italy forced scholars to flee to Constantinople, where they conserved many pieces of literature. This literature was conserved because it was considered a very important part of high-level education, and it became schoolwork for Christians.
Even though classical literature was still important in Byzantine education and rhetoric, it was still in danger because of the war-torn world dominated by Christians. In 529, Justinian's lack of tolerance for polytheists led to the closure of the academy in Athens, causing many scholars to emigrate to Persia. This was a dangerous moment for classical literature in the Byzantine world. One of the schools that was closed in the Academy of Athens was the school of Neoplatonism, which is philosophy that combines mystical elements with Platonic rationalism. Neoplatonism influenced many educated Christians as well as polytheists because its teachings focused on returning to universal goodness by practicing self-discipline in morality and intellectual studies. Even though Neoplatonism was essentially dead by the 6th century, its influence continued to be a part of the Byzantine thought and Christian writings. The principles of classical literature and rhetoric gave guidelines for a very successful presentation of Christian theology. Theologians disapproved heretical Christian doctrines by utilizing the dialogue form created by Plato and polytheistic traditions. This was done by using laudatory biographies to inspire the genre on saints' lives. The rapid increase in Christian literature created the innovation of codices. These were books with bounded pages made from parchment instead of papyrus. Parchment was much less vulnerable to damage, and codices would contain more information. This new system helped the works of Plato and Aristotle survive and spread, because the scrolls would be copied and put in codex format. Without Justinian rebuilding Constantinople, the Byzantine dependence on Greek and Latin, and Christian literature fueling the innovation of codices, classical literature could have been lost forever. In the West, classical literature virtually disappeared. The knowledge of Greek declined so quickly that by the 6th century almost no one could read classical literature. Latin, however, survived better than the Greek because scholars knew Rome's ancient literature very well. but the literature was considered too provocative for Christians because the joy that came from reading it could distract from their worship. Constantinople became the center of intellectual life in the East. Its strategic location on the shores of the Bosporus Sea allowed major trade between Europe and Asia, and the waterway between the Black and Mediterranean Seas. Because of this trade and the agriculture of the region, the markets had merchants from all over Europe and Asia. This created a society that was multilingual and multi-ethnic. There was so much diversity that approximately 72 languages were spoken there. Because of Constantinople's great range of people, both the rich and the poor could gather in city squares, theaters, and hippodromes. Because of the city's convenient location, diversity, and intellectual prosperity, Christians and Byzantine scholars from across the region would congregate in Constantinople to study Greek and Latin.
Scholars went to the city to write books and teach. These scholars respected Greek mathematics, geography, astronomy, and medicine while keeping an outlook on Orthodox Christianity that dominated the region.
Constantinople expanded intellectual thinking throughout the years. By the 13th century, there was such a great increase in schools and universities. Here, scholars, students, and teachers would come together to consider the trivium. The trivium was the study of how to use grammar, rhetoric, and logic to give analyses. This was the beginning arts that everyone would learn before gaining a higher level education. The next level was the quadrivium, which was the study of theoretical math and science. Students were the most interested in logic because they were convinced that logic could bring together order and clarify every issue, even questions about God. Logic, not just faith, was now the basis for just about anything, as it was used to try to explain everything, including whether God exists or not. For scholars, it did not matter whether the answer originated from free thinking or faith. They wished to demonstrate that the two were compatible. This way of thinking would be known as the scholastic summa, which originated from a Christian monastic school. They used a systematic exposition of the answer to every possible question, varying from a wide variety of topics, such as morality, society, and theology. This harmony was one of the goals scholars wished to accomplish. The second goal of scholars was to convert people to Christianity by using logic in their preaching. This involved trying to answer every possible question so that they could prove that Christianity is fact, causing people to no longer question the faith. During this time, women advanced greatly in their educational status. Most women could now write, and generally they would write journals about their lives, which gives great insight to what was going on at the time.
Iana komini egrasem je historiki anadromitis, zois keti Vasilias tu pateritis lexio komino. Αυτοί οι αναδρομήτης έδωσαν μια εσωτερική απόψη πολιτικής της βυζαντινής αυτοκρατορίας και των σταυροφοριών. Η Άννα έδειξε την υπερηφάνεια της, την κληρονομία της, καθώς και τον σπουδαστικισμό της. Αποδεικνύοντας εγγράφος της ότι ήξερε την αρχαία ελληνική ιστορία, την ποίηση και τη φιλοσοφία.
The preservation of texts and documentation in Constantinople became very important because it was a form of identity not only for the people, but for the city itself and its culture. The ability to preserve their identity became especially important because they had been conquered, plundered, and sacked several times by their Western neighbors, mostly during the Crusades. Once a formidable power in Eastern Europe, Constantinople gradually declined and eventually fell to the Ottomans in the 15th century. Its decline was mostly due to the rising power of its neighbors in the west, who ended up plundering the city on multiple accounts. Constantinople's time as a prosperous intellectual city was fading. Despite Constantinople's numerous military victories, its advancements in the arts, science, and thought, the empire fell to the Turks in 1453. The empire's defeat marked the end of the new Roman Empire, as well as dealing a large blow to Christianity itself. Now, nothing stood in the way of the Turks and the Western countries. After being conquered, Constantinople became the new capital of the Turkish Empire.